Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. Floodwaters have forced the closure and evacuation of Yellowstone National Park and is causing chaos for residents in Montana. Fox Weather's Max Gordon joins us live now from Livingston, Montana with the very latest. Max, how is it looking around you?
Hey, well, behind me is the Yellowstone River, and we have been seeing large pieces of debris floating down the river. Over the past day or so, these waters rose to levels that, well, folks here haven't seen in the past 100 years or more. Now, over the past day, essentially, this river rose over its banks, destroyed bridges, even floated away homes. Luckily, the one that we're standing next to right now is all right, though the river did come dangerously close. Right now, the waters are receding, but it is leaving quite the mess. You can see this yard right here where there's still mud from all the water that flowed here. And check it out. Folks here have to do a lot of cleanup right now. You can see all this mud, and I want to show you inside this home right here. Look at that, all that mud and muck in there. Just a big old mess. Folks in this neighborhood have had to spend the day mucking out their homes. Here's one man that we talked to earlier.
It's just a half-inch of sledge everywhere, like everywhere. And last night it was really bad. It stunk because it was just awful. There was sewage back up, there was everything, so we evacuated the second floor and stayed safe with all our dogs.
Flood warnings from the National Weather Service remain into effect into the evening. Some areas here picked up around 5 inches of rain. This combined with 2 to 5 inches of snow water equivalent melt to create flooding conditions that the National Weather Service says hasn't been seen before in some areas. This created a dangerous situation. According to the Montana National Guard, 12 people had to be rescued via helicopter on Monday, with more rescue operations still underway. There's been serious flooding in the town of Livingston, where we are, as well as in the town of Red Lodge, also in southern Montana near Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone is closed until at least Wednesday, and the park had to be evacuated. According to the Park Service, there have been numerous bridge and road failures, with mudslides and rock falls causing significant damage. Now, this is a major economic blow to this region as well. Folks here in Livingston rely on Yellowstone National Park as a big tourist operation, as a draw for people. Also, the Yellowstone River is a huge draw for people who like to go fly fishing. So all of this flooding is a major economic blow as they get really into the peak of their tourist season.
Yeah,
guys,
because
back to you.
people always want to go there during the summers when the weather's nice. A lot of places, like out here in Phoenix, it's hot, and so people want to get out to places like Yellowstone. Max, we were reporting that there were evacuations before. You said that too. So there's no evacuations underway at this point in time, or they are still evacuating people in this moment?
Yeah, there are still evacuations that are ongoing. So essentially the Montana National Guard has 2 helicopters up in the air. They're searching for folks. So those operations are still underway. This is definitely an active flooding event as we speak. So we will be getting an update later on in the day, as well as an update from the National Park Service on the closure of Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah, and you were saying that this is historic, but I mean, have they had any type of flooding in the past at Yellowstone, or nothing along these lines?
Yeah, I mean, this is historic flooding, right? So essentially what happened here was that we had a really significant rain event, and we had a pretty heavy late spring snowpack. So essentially the rain came in, started melting this snow, and so on top of the 5 or so inches of rain that some parts of the state received, well, we had 2 to 3 inches of melt off that occurred. That caused creeks and rivers like the Yellowstone River to swell, and we saw this historic flooding. Again, this area, we've been speaking to people, and they said they have seen flooding on the river before, but nothing like this. Homes that, were considered to be very safe, high and dry, inundated with water because of this flooding event. So just a scary situation for folks here in Livingston and across southern Montana.
Yeah, Max, we're bringing up some of that video that people have been taking on their cell phones, just watching houses, full houses, floating away on these high waters here. So devastating for that town, unfortunately. Any last thoughts on this as the cleanup is underway?
Yeah, I mean, I think the silver lining in all of this is that the community is coming together. We're seeing folks coming together to clean up houses, to, deliver food to neighbors. It really is in the case of a natural disaster that communities come together, and really you see the bonds of these communities like this. And, here in Livingston, things are no different. They are used to, the rugged wilds of Montana. But, when you have a situation like this is something that really nobody can be fully prepared for. So it is inspiring to see people coming together to help each other clean up.
All right, Fox Weather's Max Gordon, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.
And we want to continue our coverage on that because, as you can imagine, local officials are having to come together and kind of discuss what this cleanup effort is going to be, how they're going to move forward with this. They were very clearly unprepared for anything along these lines to be happening to their little town there, especially in peak tourism season, as Max was just saying. So this is a virtual press conference to address this flooding event. We're going to play it out for you from the top.
We're in day 2 of this major flood event here in Yellowstone. I want to first say thanks to all of you that have shown interest and reported so well on everything that's happening here. I hope that the time here together gives you some more information about what we've been doing over the last day and a half or so, and what's planned for upcoming days. Sunday night, and over the weekend and then into Sunday night, we received about 2 to 3 inches of rain with some warming temperatures that look like dropped on about 5.5 inches of snow that melted and caused a major flood event in most of the northern range of Yellowstone, including the Yellowstone River, obviously, Lamar Rivers, all of their tributaries. The impacts to the park, as I'll show you here in a minute, are most serious in the area between Gardner and Cook City. And Kristen, if you can forward to the map, please. Most of you are, I hope, somewhat familiar with Yellowstone. I want to just kind of give you an orientation to this map. And Kristen can use her cursor, but upper left big dot is Gardner. The upper right big dot is Cook City. Both of those towns are in Montana. The road corridor between Mammoth and Cook City, and then the loop around Norris Canyon is called what we call the northern loop of Yellowstone. The loop below it is called the southern loop. Just so you have that reference, because I'm going to refer to both of those as we go through this. The flood event mostly and most seriously impacted the road between Mammoth Hot Springs and Gardner. Kristen will point that out. It's about a 5-mile section of road to the north entrance. I'll show you some pictures here. Most of you that have seen the video that we released from our helicopter yesterday have seen a lot of the damage within that corridor. The road from Lamar Valley to Cook City, secondarily, is an area that has been substantially impacted. We still have very high water as of today. There's some conflicting predictions about this weekend and whether or not we may have another high water event coming. We still have somewhere around 12 inches of snowpack left. And if we get warming temperatures and the right mixture of precipitation like we did Sunday, we could have another flood event coming through Yellowstone in the upcoming 4 or 5 days. I'll come back to this map, but Chris, if you want to just kind of click through a couple of the photos. This is a section of road that is between Mammoth and Gardner, Montana. Mammoth, Wyoming is kind of where the headquarters is. This is a Gardner, and the north entrance is usually the second or third back and forth tide entrance for most visitation coming through the park. West entrance being the first, and the north entrance here at Gardner kind of ties with the south entrance in Jackson. Supports a very high volume of visitation through the park. But what I want to kind of point out here is that this is not, and this is just one section, this is not going to be an easy rebuild. There's obviously things that we're going to need to do to stabilize once the water comes down, assess what the full damage is and the length of that corridor, but also with the right people assessing whether it makes sense to build here in the future. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later. But we'll click through a couple shots and we'll go back to full screen so we can talk about kind of what we're doing. So if you want to hit the next couple pictures, Kristen. Another shot from a different angle, same road. Next slide. A lot of this, so where the road's not fully gone, like in those previous pictures, but is compromised. And so each one of these segments that looks like this will have to be evaluated and figured out how we can stabilize it and make it safe for travel. Next slide. This is one section in the section between Lamar Valley and Cook City. It's another example where the road's been completely washed away, where the river potentially has changed course, perhaps permanently. And so we'll be evaluating whether or not we need to make some roadway realignments. Next slide. As most of you know, a lot of bridges that support trail usage in Yellowstone with so many waterways, backcountry bridges, even bridges that are close to the road for hiking trails and things like that. This is an example of the Rescue Creek Bridge between Mammoth and Gardner. This bridge is now gone since this picture was taken, but there are literally hundreds and hundreds of bridges in the backcountry that we'll need to do evaluations on moving forward. Next slide. Considerable amount of mudslides, rock slides, trees down. Next slide. This is a section of road between Mammoth and Cook City. So a lot of debris, especially in areas where the rivers ran across the roads and brought down substantial numbers of trees, which will require considerable work to clear. Next slide. Next slide. This was a housing unit that 6 of our employees and families lived in the town of Gardner. It was fairly immediately Sunday night compromised by high flood waters to the point where we evacuated it first thing on Monday morning yesterday. Last night, somewhere around 7 p.m., this entire structure succumbed to flood pressures and went into the river. This is the Yellowstone River just north of Gardner. That entire structure floated on the water for about 5 miles. Unfortunately, although a lot of the belongings did get out of this house, many of our employees lost a considerable amount. So we're working on a full range of actions to support those employees. And I think that's the last slide, Kristen, right? If we can go back to the map real quick. So what we've focused most on in this last day or so, or day and a half, has been, as you can see, those road conditions are extremely dangerous, unstable. Remember, it's mid-June in Yellowstone. The park was, not only was the park full of visitors, the gateway communities were also full, including Gardner. We had to make a decision yesterday because of unsafe conditions to move all of the visitors out of northern Yellowstone, and we pushed them south into the southern loop. Bill will talk a little bit about this in a minute, but the town of Gardner was cut off on the other side because of flooding roads on Highway 89 into Montana, which have since just recently reopened over the last couple hours. But we had several thousand visitors stranded in Gardner, along with residents, because they couldn't come into the park because of the road damage, and they couldn't exit to the north to Livingston because of road damage. We'll chat a little bit more about that. Once we got the visitors yesterday out of the northern loop, we proceeded to start evaluating more carefully what the impacts of flooding were on the southern loop, and what, from everything from the roads to the bridges to wastewater treatment facilities and those types of things. The damage on the southern loop is much less than the northern loop. However, there are several areas on that loop that are potentially compromised that we're evaluating. So we went ahead and made the decision to clear the park of visitors completely. And so as of this morning, all visitors are currently out of Yellowstone. Because it's mid-June, because Yellowstone has a lot of backcountry use, we had a large number of backcountry campers and users that we've tracked, have made contact with. We have put a full closure of the Yellowstone backcountry into place, and we have contacted or know the whereabouts of every backcountry user currently in Yellowstone. Right now, there's only one group remaining in the Northern Range. We have made contact with them. We were prepared to do helicopter evacuations if necessary. That hasn't been necessary up to this point. And we will evaluate the backcountry as time goes on to determine when it's safe to reopen. Another big key is another big factor we focused on is supporting the communities of Gardner and Cook City. Both communities, to one degree or another, were cut off from food and water. The communities, the county, the state has done a great job of getting support, getting the road reopened north, and getting visitors evacuated from Gardner into to north on Highway 89 toward Livingston. That's been happening over the last couple hours, and we're standing by, and I'll let Bill talk more about that, but to provide any level of support that's necessary to these communities in addition to what we're doing inside of Yellowstone. $1 million question is, what's the damage? Answer is we don't know exactly yet. Water is extremely high. We're not putting teams in harm's way at this point. When the water subsides, probably early next week, we will be pulling together a large number of people from different agencies around the country to come to Yellowstone and help us assess what the damage is to various infrastructure in the park. So we will not know. I mean, you can see by the pictures, it's extensive, but we will not know exactly what the timelines are, what the costs are, or any of that information until we get teams on the ground and can actually assess what happened and what it's going to take to repair it. On top of all this, we've been out of power here in Mammoth for about 30 hours. We've had multiple power failures in other parts of the park. I commend Northwestern Energy for getting teams on the ground as quickly as possible. They're conducting repairs as we speak, and we're hopeful that electricity will be back on in Yellowstone here within the next couple hours. Last thing that I'll cover, and I'll hand it over to Bill, is most of you can see, or well, most of you know that Yellowstone can receive up to 1 million people per month and 1 million visits per month in the summer months. We will likely not reopen the road between Gardner and Cook City for the rest of this season, looking at the damage. I'll stay as optimistic as possible, but even if we got started right now, I'm not sure we could get the road on the northern end reopened. So that will likely stay closed for the rest of the season. What we've been engaged in substantial conversations with gateway communities, including West Yellowstone and Cody and Gardner and others in Jackson here soon, is how do we take an appropriate amount of visitation and when it's safe to do so, reopen that southern loop. One thing that we definitely know is that half the park cannot support all of the visitation. So we are exploring a range of options, including some timed entry, potential reservation type systems that we would look to implement when the South Loop is safe to open. A couple other things, because the power's been out for as long as it has, we've had wastewater treatment facility failures in multiple locations, backup generator failures, reinforcing the decision to move visitors out of the park as a good one. But all of that infrastructure is going to need to be checked and evaluated before we want to put visitors back in the park. And so we've had daily conversations with the communities, very good feedback. We've had some short-term objectives like getting the visitors out of Gardner, getting resupplied, getting the power back on, some of those basic things. Now we're moving into some of the kind of more medium term. What does reopening and when does it look like that could happen? And that would only be on the southern loop. So in this map, Norris Canyon down or south. And so I want to say we've had tremendous support from the secretary. I talked to her this morning, talked to the director of the Park Service this morning. Incredible support from both the governor of Montana and Wyoming. Congressional delegations from Montana and Wyoming have been extremely supportive, as has the work with our partners in Park County, Montana, our business partners in the park. This is absolutely a team effort. We know how important this is to everyone. We're doing our best job to stabilize the situation until we can get the water down, assess what the damage is, and then we'll work on a plan together for reopening as that becomes feasible. So with that, I'll stop, Jenny, and hand it back over to you and to Bill, I think.
Sounds good. We'll stop sharing the screen and turn it over to Commissioner Bill Berg from Park County, Montana.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, Cam. A little bit ironic that this spectacular landscape was created by violent geologic and hydrologic events, and it's just not very handy when it happens while we're all here settled on it. Park County actually gets its name from Yellowstone Park. Park County has 2 of Yellowstone's 5 entrances, and as you saw from that map, one is Gardner, Montana, established 140 years ago. The other is Cook City and Silvergate. And the only way to get to Cook City and Silvergate for our county staff is through Yellowstone Park. So CAM's challenges are significant, as are ours. We can't provide law enforcement services out there right now. Public health services, we can't get out there to pick up the garbage. Some of this stuff is pretty basic. We can't get out there to help clean up the streets because they have their own flood event. Sunday night was when we got our first alert that there was trouble on the horizon, when 2 of our bridges on the Bannock Trail between Silvergate and Cook City washed out. Shortly thereafter, a 3rd washed out. And the public works director and I had plans to go out there early Monday morning, and he couldn't even make it to Gardner. So the landscape literally and figuratively has changed dramatically in the last 36 hours. Gardner's a pretty rough and tumble place. It was established in 1880 by a gentleman who was actually asked to leave Mammoth because he had opened up a hotel there the year before Yellowstone became a park. And he headed down the hill and laid out a town site right on the boundary. So it's a company town. It's a Yellowstone town, and it lives and dies by tourism. And this is going to be a pretty big hit. COVID hit us like the rest of the world, March of 2020. We had a pretty dramatic fire in Gardner that next summer, which hit us really hard on top of the impacts of the pandemic. and now we got a little fire or a little flood to add to the mix. Gardener businesses actually did really well last year. The ones I talked to have said that they broke records. I think that's just a little bit of pent-up travel desire after COVID. The businesses I talked to had reservations that were running even stronger for this summer, and now that's all gone. So businesses are already trying to sort out what they're going to do with their seasonal staff. They can't afford to keep them. Their business projections are shot. Reservations are being canceled. Folks are asking for refunds, which is understandable. Some businesses may have already spent that money. So they're looking to try to figure out how to hold things together, because to make a living in Gardner, which I expect is true in all the gateway communities, you have to budget pretty hard. You have to make hay while the sun shines, and you have to hang on to your cash over the winter so that you can afford to open the doors in the spring. And this is hitting just a couple of weeks after Memorial Day. So it's going to be pretty tough for Gardner businesses to recover from. And that's not even to mention the impacts to the infrastructure. We're still assessing the damage to the sewer and water system in Gardner. The sewer system actually serves Mammoth Hot Springs as well, so that's critical for all of us. Most of us consider Mammoth and Gardner, even though we span 2 park counties and 2 states, most of us consider that to be one community. So we have a lot to work on together. As Cam mentioned, Montana Department of Transportation has been critical so far. Our county road crew was working side by side with the Department of Transportation throughout the night and into the day-to-day to get Yankee Jim Canyon opened up. And that created a bit of a relief valve. So the visitors have been able to get out of Gardner. Supplies at the grocery store were dwindling. Hotels certainly were willing and able to serve visitors another day, but restaurant provisions were almost entirely gone. So it was critical that we finally were able to get people out of Gardner. So now we regroup. When MDOT called this morning, they said that Yankee Jim will be 35 miles an hour. They'll continue to do work, but they want to keep traffic to a minimum so that they can work as well, even as they provide egress for visitors and access in and out for locals, as well as service vehicles and delivery trucks. So it's going to be a little slow going here for a while. It's no pun intended, fluid situation. As Cam mentioned, we'd like to think the highest of the water is already behind us, but we can't say that for sure just yet. There's still quite a bit of snow up high, but we have been given a little bit of a timeout here. The river's backed off quite a bit, and that's what has allowed the roads to open up and for us to kind of start to take stock and figure out what next steps are.